Welcome, everyone. Today is a special meeting for the City Council for goal setting. It's Tuesday, January 24th, 2017. Welcome. And we are located at the Moore Bay Veterans Hall and the time of the meeting is starting at 3:30. For the record, we do have a quorum. All members are present. We'll call the meeting to order. And since this is a special meeting, none of our special formalities of our City Council meeting are starting us off. And we do have, so we'll go through a staff report introduction from our city manager, get us started there. We have public comment at the beginning of the meeting. We'd be glad to do that. And then we could also, time permitting, we can close with some public comment as well following all the discussions. So with that, if we could do just a brief introduction on what's going on, and then I'll open up public comment for those. Are there anybody in the audience who'd like to speak for public comment at the beginning? Yes? Okay. We'll just do a brief introduction, then we'll do public comment. Mr. Buckingham.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So we'll do a couple of slides of introduction, sort of scene setting here, and then turn it back over to you for public comment, as you just stated, and then
Sounds
get
great.
into the meat of this. So this is our goal setting session number 2. On the screen there is the process that we're in the midst of. We completed session number 1 2 weeks ago. We're in goal setting session number 2 now. In purple is an item that we added since the last meeting based on council input, and that is that we are scheduling a community goals forum on the 31st of January, and I'll describe that a little more in just a moment. And then we have February 14 council meeting. The goals and objectives are intended to be a business item at that council meeting and the council meeting itself. And then if we are able to stay on track here, the 28th of February is the target date for the council to approve our FY18 goals and objectives. The agenda that we're going to follow tonight after public comment is to first provide a brief update on the Community Goals Forum. I think I'll actually do that right before public comment. And then review the council and community input that we received as part of public comment in the January 10 session. The input that we received in writing is all in the agenda packet. And then to preview some draft modified goals based on the council's input and the community input last 2 weeks ago, to preview some draft goal descriptors, and we'll talk about those in a little more detail, and then to review and discuss draft key objectives associated with those goals. And if time allows, we could consider a rough draft of a city mission statement, which was one of the items that the council was interested in considering. The Community Goals Forum, the council requested, and is a great idea to do a Community Goals Forum, and that's scheduled for a week from tonight. So that it will be a much more interactive opportunity for the community to provide input to this process. It'll be an open house format, so it'll actually, well, I'll get to that in a second. It'll be an open house format where the community will have opportunity to engage the council one-on-one and in small groups and staff on the draft goals and draft objectives, to provide specific input on whatever draft goals come out of tonight's meeting, to help prioritize those draft goals with that the council we come out of this meeting with, and then to sort of vote on some of the community proposed objectives that we've received as part of the public outreach process so far. It will be a Brown Act meeting, which means which is, from one sense, very good, which means the entire council can be here, interact, speak, and hear each other, but it won't be organized like this with council on the dais and 3 minutes of public comment and no great opportunities for public interaction. So in consulting with our city attorney, and the mayor will open the meeting at 6 p.m. With a brief official opening of the public meeting. Staff will provide a very short update to the folks that are there at the time on sort of what the process is, and in this room we'll have various tables and stations in it for council members to be at, for staff members to be at, and for community members to come, sit down, talk, put stickers on priorities, and interact for several hours. And so that meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, January 31st at 6 p.m. and concluding about 8 p.m. or however long the community is here to interact with us here in Vets Hall. So, Mr. Mayor, with that, I think I'll turn it back over to you for opening public comment.
Okay, great. Thanks for the introduction and outline. And so with that, there aren't any speaker slips. Thanks for all coming, and we'll open up for public comment. Welcome. Please come on up for those that'd like to speak. We're going to open up public comment again following the presentation, so you have an opportunity. So, Homer, please come on up if you'd like. We're going to have public comment at the beginning, and then time permitting, we're hoping that we'll have some digestion through this, and then we can close with some public comment, time permitting. So it might be best to kind of give us your overview now. Appreciate it.
My name is Homer Alexander. I'm a Morro Bay resident.
Is your mic on? AGP, is that mic on? Okay. All right. Good. Thank you.
Goal number 2 should be goal number 1. Without money, you're not going to accomplish very much. Also, the timeline to complete this goal is 2025. You can't wait that long. Instead of spending a lot of time on meetings to discuss redevelopment of the power plant property or paying consultants for plans to try and attract high-tech companies, both of which will take at least a decade to produce any meaningful results, I recommend that you concentrate on our existing tourism industry. Putting strategies in place to help this group will generate the most revenue for the general fund in the shortest period of time. I was pleased to see that there are already several objectives in this goal that included lodging. This report was prepared by the County Tourism Bureau. Note the 23% difference in the average daily room rate, or ADR, between Morro Bay and Cayucos and Cambria, our 2 North Coast competitors. If Morro Bay could close that gap, the city would generate enough extra revenue to cover the anticipated increase in CalPERS costs and have money left over for other projects. In Objective 4, the staff has already identified a portion of the lodging stock is dated and that an incentive program may be beneficial. A specific idea for an incentive is a TOT rebate program. If a hotel owner would agree to make a significant investment, and I mean a lot more than their once every 5-year cosmetic room refresher, the city would rebate half of the additional TOT revenue that the investment generated for a period of 10 to 20 years. Knowing this additional cash flow would be available, there is the potential for not only it to encourage a current owner to upgrade his or her property, but also has the potential of attracting a developer-operator to invest in new property in Morro Bay. A TOT rebate program might even incentivize lenders to be more inclined to financing projects in our city. You probably are thinking, how could the city give up a portion of the additional TOT revenue? But wouldn't you rather have 5% of something rather than 10% of nothing? Here is an ordinance that was used to establish the TOT rebate program in Palm Springs, which was very successful. Thank you.
Thanks, Homer. Anybody else for public comment? Sir, if you can bring the mic down too before you get started, we'll make sure we can hear you. Thank you.
I'll get started.
Thank you. Welcome.
Bill Newman, I'm a resident of Morro Bay.
Thanks.
And I realize that you have many, many things to consider and of great importance. And, for example, to begin with, we need to get the sewer plant done. But let's think beyond that. Let's think ahead and think big. Think about the power plant, for example. Could be a big factor in our future. So let's get serious about it. What could that property become? What would be of great advantage to us as a city, both economically and otherwise? One thing it could be would be a water park, a seawater park. An example is the U.S. National Whitewater Center in Charlotte, North Carolina. It has water cascades with kayaks, inflatable boat rides, and all kinds of water activities, streams with inner tube surfing and paddleboarding. Inside that huge building out there, that big box, all that could happen, inside or outside. The whole property could be used with recreational activities like bike trails and mountain biking. Zip line from the stacks over to the dunes. How about that? That would be exciting and a big attraction. Well, if it can't be one of those things, maybe it could be an aquarium, like in Chattanooga, Tennessee. They have a wonderful aquarium that could fit right in that building. It's 3 stories high inside. So, anyway, maybe the Monterey people would be interested in establishing a new concept of an aquarium in our place. Who knows? But anyway, we would need a person, a real go-getter, to go out and pursue all these possibilities. So I would encourage you to get somebody to go out and spend heavy time working out something for our future for that property. Something significant, something big that would really make a difference in our community. So we got a big box out there with lots of room in it. So let's think inside and outside that box.
Thank you, Mr. Newman. Anybody else for public comment? Seeing none, I'll close public comment and bring it back to the council and get started with the rest of the presentation and questions and discussions. And then following all that, we'll open it up for public comment at the closing. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Buckingham.
AGP, could you please switch back to the presentation? So the next part of the presentation is to summarize for the council and for everybody the input that the council gave and that the public gave at the last session. So on the screen here is the consensus, we think, of what the input that we received from the council specifically on goals, and there'll be another one that addresses input on objectives. And just for everybody's reference, we have both goals and objectives in our strategic planning framework. Goals are longer-term, broader, high-priority items that the city wants to focus on for a period of years. And objectives are annual objectives for each fiscal year that are feasible and attainable and resourceable and measurable, so we know what we are doing and actually trying to accomplish within a specific year. So a great example of goals is build a wastewater reclamation facility over a 5-year period, and an objective related to that might be to complete and certify the EIR. That's something that we can do in 1 year. This was input on goals. One is to reduce the number of long-term goals from 10 to something less than 10, to consider prioritizing the goals, to include a paragraph for each goal that more sort of fully describes it, what we're really talking about and getting after, to develop a city mission statement for essential tasks and services that we used to have in the goals but maybe are better belong as core things the city does in a mission statement. to remove several of the previous city goals, such as maintain public safety, quality of life, improve city operations, that are the normal things that we do and should be covered in our mission statement, to consider some metrics to measure our progress, to keep the goals and objectives simple. And the general consensus that we came away from after listening to the council and the community at the last study session was that these following 4 areas were likely high priority community goals. Something related to WRF and water, something related to fiscal sustainability and economic development, something related to streets and infrastructure, and then something related to completing our general plan, local coastal plan, and other critical land use documents. So that's the a summary of what we thought was the consensus input from the council on goals. On objectives, similarly, to reduce the number of annual objectives, and parenthetically, which will also perhaps free up some staff time to that's not project focused but is program focused to perform with excellence the things that we should be doing every day. And then to begin the process of determining what objectives to consider by having a few on the list and then sort of voting objectives onto the island instead of having a list of 30 objectives and trying to determine which ones to cut off. And then also to consider internal departmental objectives that are not council goals but are more administrative and management priorities. And I'll note that we're already implementing that, so the staff is collecting items that are sort of administrative or management priorities from a staff perspective that I will use with the department heads to ensure that we are improving operations and those things, and we'll bring those forward in the budget process also because some of those will require resources. Here is the public comment input. I want to make clear that this is the comment that we heard at the podium, and that there's been tons of great public input to the goals at morrowbayca.gov address and other inputs, but wanted to capture here what was said because it wasn't written anywhere else. The one was to sort of recognize that the city has a real fiscal sustainability problem, that to focus on public safety, to do a weekend or a weeknight workshop, to allow sort of anonymous input from the public in the goal-setting process, to develop long-term and short-term goals. And I just noted that actually we do that. That's what we term goals and then objectives. To reduce the number of goals and objectives, to complete a commercial real estate inventory. And I'll note that item is actually on our goals and objectives for this current fiscal year. And then a question, have we made any progress on goals? So moving forward, what's on the screen here in various groups and colors are our 10 existing goals. So this is the 10 goals that we currently have. The 7 at the top there are ones that likely fall into what remain as priorities but could be refined and combined and modified. So goal number 1, develop a new water reclamation facility, and existing goal number 9, improve water supply diversification. Those two are pretty closely related and could be combined into a single goal. Likewise, ensure fiscal sustainability and support economic development. Those two are sort of getting after the same thing, so we saw those as ripe for combination. Likewise, Goal 2, improve streets, and Goal 7, improve city infrastructure, facilities, and public spaces. There's relation there, a nexus there. And then Goal 3 is sort of a standalone, but the council indicated an importance to retain that as a goal or going forward, and that is to review and update significant city land use plans. We also sort of heard from the council that likely removing goals 4, 8, and 10 and including them as appropriate in a mission statement or in departmental objectives might be appropriate. And so that is maintain core public safety services, which is certainly an essential task for the city. To enhance quality of life, you might actually describe that as the purpose of the city's task or mission. and that could be included in the mission statement as well. And then in approved city operations, we really see getting after that with those administrative management priorities that won't necessarily show up on our goals and objectives, but that will be a sort of contract between me and the department heads as we work through each year. So taking those things and looking at the 2 amber, the 2 green, the 2 blues, and then the purple, and distilling those, we came up with this and added some prioritization. So we see that there may be council consensus around an essential goal, number 1, that is to complete the water reclamation facility and a one water program. And we can wordsmith this and work with this to get it just right. Perhaps another essential goal is to achieve economic and financial sustainability. Goal number 3 may be to improve infrastructure and public spaces. Should note here that streets are a critical part of our infrastructure. And goal number 4 might be to review and update significant city land use plans. And that is it's essentially unchanged from our current set of goals. So those are a draft set of 4 goals down from 10 that based on the input that we heard from our last study session and a significant amount of public comment, I think, or at least it's consistent with the public comment that we've received, that may be a good starting point for us to discuss the city's goals. Moving forward from that, and we'll come back in a few minutes so we'll take a pause after the descriptor part of this to discuss the goals before we get into objectives. But to flesh these out a little bit, we did a little bit of work on what some descriptors might be for each of these goals. And so this is sort of a paragraph that goes underneath the goal to more fully describe what we're really talking about, to perhaps add some time frame to it, and to focus in on what sort of objectives might be related to each goal. So under a goal that may be complete the WRF project and one water program, a descriptor may state that this essential city goal centers around completion of the city's water reclamation facility and includes implementation of a comprehensive water resource policy, program, and infrastructure to ensure a sustainable water future. Key items include building the WRF and associated reclamation system, developing a one water policy, and diversifying our water supply toward water independence. The duration, we'd see this as a 6-year goal that should be complete by the year 2023, and that the focus is that this goal includes objectives related to the water reclamation facility and one water planning and implementation. And I think it's important that we capture this is not just develop a plan, but implement that plan. Goal number 2, another essential goal, proposed essential goal, is to achieve economic and financial sustainability. A descriptor of this might be that this essential goal recognizes the city is currently not able to fund all of the basic services and requirements at the level our community expects, and that along with the importance of strengthening and maintaining strong financial management practices. It states that as of January 2017, right now, our general fund revenues are around 25% below the below the requirement to deliver the services that the community has grown to expect. This goal centers around economic development and fiscal actions, specifically revenue enhancement, cost control, and sound fiscal practices that target a 25% increase in revenues while ensuring sound fiscal management practices are in place. Duration, it's an 8-year goal. The city intends to achieve the fiscal sustainability by 2025. I would note, based on Mr. Alexander's excellent public comment, that a 25% increase hopefully doesn't mean 25% in the 8th year, but 4% the first year, 4% the second year, 4% the third year. It would be awesome if we could deliver 25% over the first year or two, but we also want to have attainable, manageable goals. The focus of this includes objectives related to revenue enhancement, general economic development, cost control, and assurance of sound financial management policies are in place. A potential descriptor for goal number 3, improve street or infrastructure and public spaces. This important goal centers around substantially improving the city's streets, multimodal transportation infrastructure, facilities, and public spaces. The city does not currently have sufficient revenues to make substantial infrastructure improvements, and therefore this goal is contingent on making significant progress on goal number 2, achieve fiscal sustainability. Therefore, this is at minimum an 8-year goal because it is absolutely dependent on increasing our revenues and or controlling our costs and reducing expenditures. The focus, this goal includes objectives related to streets, bike, pedestrian, and parking improvements, city facilities, and beautification of public spaces. And finally, and we'll take a pause after this for the council to ask questions and discuss the goals, the draft goals and these descriptors. Finally, goal number 4, review and update significant city land use plans. This important goal centers around completion of the city's general plan, local coastal plan rewrite, and update of other essential land use documents. While the general plan is the important task, update of some other land use plans and master plans is also a priority. Duration, this is a 2-year goal that should be complete by the summer of 2019. And the focus, this goal includes objectives related to completion of the general plan, local coastal plan, and other important planning documents. And Mr. Mayor, before I turn it back to you, I'll just note that the durations are on here. There's some thought behind these. So we should be complete with the general plan, local coastal plan by 2019. So we have a 2-year duration on this goal. At that time, does planning become not important to the city? No, not at all. But we should be caught up and be in a sustainment phase for planning, not a need to focus in super hard and improve or complete our general plan. Similarly, if you go back to goal number 1, the water reclamation facility, that time was picked for a reason. 2023 is 2 years after projected completion of the water reclamation facility as is currently conceived, along with the master reclamation plan, and is right at the time that our state water contract, that we pay off the infrastructure piece of the state water contract. So that's the year that we could reasonably achieve that goal of having both completed the water reclamation facility and demonstrated that we've essentially made it to water independence. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm going to back up here to the overview slide, and then you can direct where you'd like to go if you'd like to.
Okay, great. Thanks for the overview and outline, and we can go through questions from basically through goal 1 through 4, and I'll look to my left to start with Red, and you can start with your questions, and then we'll just go through to Marlos on the end here, and we'll get through all of our questions and comments with that. So, Red, you want to lead us off in any questions?
Yeah, I don't have any.
Or comments,
Yeah.
either or.
I don't have any questions. Just a little wordsmithing. In the areas where you talk about the services and levels that our community expects, I'd rather say that our community deserves. I think we've managed to lower expectations significantly with the condition of our streets, and we deserve better. So that's all I have to say.
Great, Matt?
Dave, I do have a question, and I guess this could go to almost anybody in the department. In terms of your construction of these goals and then the objectives therein, I see all the objectives in the packet that you've given out, and they're listed the objectives to be completed underneath that goal. Is there any sort of timeline with that, or is that just to be included, to be done when there is spare time, or looking at the workload that these various departments have and to be worked in, or how will those be completed?
Are you describing the objectives that are in the staff report as part of the staff report that are associated with each goal, sorry, this froze up, there we go, such as these
Yes.
6 objectives, then those draft objectives, once approved, adopted by the council, perhaps on February 28th, would those 6 and the others that I think are 22 this year, essentially become the staff's work plan for this year.
Okay.
And then we would take those into the budgeting process to ensure that, or to work to identify the funds to support those tasks. And should there be funds available, and as part of this process, we'll be looking closely to ensure that there's staff time available to complete them, then those 22 objectives, or however many we end up with, become the work plan for the staff technically beginning on July 1st, but we'll start thinking about them right now. Become the work plan for the year.
That makes it clear because the format that you used, and in the past year, one time we started with 10 goals, and what was it, how many objectives, 80?
88 last year.
Okay, 88, so we're down, we're 75% down, and so I just wanted to make clear, and because one of the commentaries in the past few meetings was, if we put too much on our plate, we can't get anything done, and then we're constantly chasing a tail, and we can never really satisfy it. And in light of the fiscal realities that we're facing, I think the format that these have been placed in, I appreciate it, so thank you.
Thanks, Matt. John?
Thanks, Dave, for the overview. Are these meant to be in priority order, the 4 goals that you have here, in terms of importance, or are they considered all to be equally important?
If nothing's a priority, if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority, which is one great reason to have 4 goals and 22 objectives instead of 10 and 88. Based on the council input that we received, and in this case, what we heard were essentially 5 individual council member voices in a discussion, which is great, but there wasn't a council motion that said to do X, Y, or Z. We may well come out of tonight with that. What we heard from several council members was to consider prioritizing these. So what staff did is said, we think that fiscal sustainability and the WRF are essential goals, and that's why we term them as essential goals, and that improve infrastructure and public spaces and land use plans are important goals, and thus we termed them as important, one step below essential, but still a goal. From my perspective as your city manager, I would be just as comfortable removing those words and reordering them however you think it is important to reorder them. And I'd be open for you to have that conversation, and if you'd like staff input on that, we'd be happy to give that. So we chose to prioritize one way here just as a sample, and this is sort of how we had done it 2 weeks ago, and there was some comment that sort of liked that style, but if we want to say goal number 1 is priority number 1, goal number 2 is priority number 2, then I'm very comfortable with that also.
Good, thanks. I wasn't insinuating that. I was just looking for a yes or no. So that's okay. And my second question is, where does or where would something related to the Embarcadero or harbor and improvement of those general operations and economic development, et cetera, of that go under these 4 goals that we have here? And I've read the objectives, and so, for instance, if reevaluating leases and on the Embarcadero was something that was important, is that something that might fit under this, or does that come under the department goals? You envision that as a department goal?
I think it depends on what the objective is that you're sort of getting after. If it's an economic development, fiscal sustainability item, then it may well be a council-adopted objective related to or under achieve economic and financial sustainability. If it is general improvement of the public spaces along the waterfront, then that might fall under goal number 3, improve infrastructure and public spaces. If it is how harbor operations are executed, then that might be a internal departmental goal objective that I have for Mr. Endersby and his department during the year. So I think it depends on what you're after to figure out where it fits.
Okay, good. That's helpful. And then my other question is, with regard to specific departments, one could assume that improving systems and operations is kind of a maintenance thing. However, it also could lead to significantly greater efficiencies and economies that could significantly increase revenues and contribute to improvements that would lend themselves to cost reduction. So one thought would be, in terms of importance, really concentrating at the departmental level at assessing the departmental operations and really looking at significant opportunities for improvement in systems wherever it fits, to me, is significantly important and should be included somewhere here, although we may assume, again, that that's just something that happens naturally. I think, given our fiscal issues, that that has to move up in importance as opposed to a routine maintenance goal, just my opinion. So no need for comment, just my opinion with regard to that. And the last thing would be a project like the aquarium project. Where would something like that fit? Would that be an objective specifically, possibly under fiscal, sustainability, et cetera?
Yes, that's where I would put it. On that one particularly, where we've got council direction on that, we're moving a direction, and we're not going to let that fall off the plate. So it may not need to be there as an objective because you've already granted consent of landowner to the Central Coast Aquarium, and we're taking all the actions that we can to help facilitate that project. But if we wanted to tack that thing up there, the place to do it would be under what is currently as goal number 2, essential goal.
Got it. And the only wordsmithing I would do is I would change goal number 2 to achieve economic and fiscal sustainability to be more encompassing. Thanks.
Thank you.
Marlis?
Yeah, I have a question first, and then I have a couple comments. Can you tell me, Dave, when we will receive the 6-month update on the progress toward this year's goals? Because I was thinking that would be helpful to have before we vote on goals for next year, so we could get a sense of how much progress we've made, and if there are some that we may have had to drop off the list because we aren't going to have time to complete them, or maybe we've had to add some, which I suspect we have. So it would be helpful to have that before we actually make a final decision on the coming year's goals.
Sure thing. I think we brought an update to council in late fall, and I'd be happy to put on if you'd like, on the consent calendar at the next meeting, my tracking spreadsheet of where we are on each of the 88 goals and objectives.
I would find it very helpful. Thank you.
I'll get that done this week. I'll include it as part of my update to you this week, and then we'll also put it on the consent calendar just so it's officially through.
Okay. And with respect to the goals, I agree with the way you've ordered them here, and I think that the top 2 are essential, and I wouldn't try to make a distinction between the 2 of them because we really do have to work on both of those. And I agree that the other 2 I would call important. We would like to obviously work on those, but they are less important than the top 2. I was thinking that in your description of, let me see, the goal on economic and fiscal sustainability, it would be a good idea to include in the descriptor the PERS situation. So it's very clear the cause and how serious, and that is a substantial cause of the current situation, just to describe that. And then also under the review and update of significant city land use plans, I'm just curious to know if that includes implementation of the plan in any ways, and I'm thinking specifically of the zoning code. Is that considered part of updating it, or is that considered a step after the plan is completed and we've approved it?
The zoning code is doing the zoning code update. So when we're done with it and it's certified, we'll be using it.
Okay.
Starting from as soon as it's certified, that's when we start using it.
Okay.
Certified by the Coastal Commission.
Right, but it is part of the plan, correct? Of the plan update, the general plan update.
Yeah, it is the general plan, local coastal program, and zoning code update. It's all of those components, and the zoning kind of comes at the end because you got to be done with the general plan LCP part first to give direction to the implementation piece, which is the zoning code.
All right, I was talking about the language of the goal, that it does include some implementation of the general plan.
The language in the descriptor says update of other essential land use documents. That's the zoning code.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure it was in there.
Yeah, thanks. So, I guess one way to think about that is the zoning code is a code, and once it's approved, it's part of the code, and we're automatically implementing that. Different from developing a master plan for a park, and then that's on the shelf, and at some point in the future, we're going to implement that. So as soon as that thing's approved, it's part of the code, and we're implementing it. And I appreciated your comment on goal number 2 and adding some reference to PERS. We'll think through that and see how that should fit best. I feel compelled to state, though, that the PERS issue is not the primary issue that we have with fiscal and sustainability. Even if CalPERS board had not reduced the discount rate from 7.5% to 7%, we would still not have the funds we require to pave our streets, replace our bathrooms, and meet the level of service our community expects.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I know that, but this has exacerbated the problem, so.
It has.
Thanks.
Okay, great. Thanks for everybody's comments, particularly the last few from Marlis as well. So just a couple more things. Just to reiterate on Goal 2 and PERS, as far as how that's implemented in there, just to be clear, that's more of an objective that we'll be looking at, not necessarily in the goal itself. I think that's your point, is where we are as far as goal being achieve economic and fiscal sustainability. We're not, the PERS item, as I understand it, was more of an objective to review that portion of it.
What I heard from Ms. McPherson is to consider including in the descriptor a reference to PERS as one of the causes of our fiscal challenge. Not the only cause, but one of the cause, an exacerbating cause. There may also be an objective that we would consider that relates to PERS, and we can certainly discuss that, but I don't think we included an objective related to PERS, because it'll be a great discussion, but at the end of the day, we're at the mercy of PERS. The fun fact, the cost for Vacaville to buy out of PERS right now, if they wanted to, is $968 million. We're not Vacaville, but we're not going to be able to buy out of PERS, and so I would not. Don't see the needing to put a bunch of objectives related to dealing with PERS. We need to deal with PERS by improving our revenues, controlling our costs, and having good financial management practices.
Enough said. Good enough. Goal 3, as far as improve infrastructure in public spaces, just want to talk briefly about in the improving infrastructure, capital investment planning. So we've implemented some in our budget portion capital investment funds. I just want to ensure that while the goal talks about objectives related to streets, bike, pedestrian, and improving those, would it be prudent to actually ensure that the capital investment planning that goes along with that is part of that goal as well? And then the other thing I think I had in there, while we're talking about parking improvements, city facilities, is, I'm looking at waterfront to be included in there as well. I know I might be getting a little bit too specific on things, but just wanted to throw that out there for discussion.
What was the second one, where waterfront, where did you reference that, sir?
Just under focus, it says, the goal includes objectives related to streets, bike, pedestrian, parking improvements, city facilities, beautification, open spaces. I just want to note that, our waterfront, the importance of our waterfront, and two, don't want to be, not trying to be too specific. I know we can get, into the details of that, but just throwing that out for the discussion. I imagine during our forum and workshop, we'll get a lot of input on that as well.
Good. Appreciate that. Got that as a consideration. And then the on capital investment planning, we'll look at that, think that through, and that might also fall under the fiscal sustainability
Sure.
number 2 that said, we might also want to consider, if we have the capacity, an objective this year or next year that deals specifically with capital investment planning and putting in place the right structure for annual capital investment planning.
Okay.
And in fact, that's something that we're actually working on this year in our current fiscal year goals is doing the engineering assessment work to figure out what our capital investment requirements are. So we're actually have already started that, which is probably positive.
Okay, good. With that, I guess I can conclude and we can move on to the next portion of this.
Okay, I'm going to move forward a couple of slides here. So perhaps doing pretty well on time here, amazingly well. Perhaps let's try on the first one, Mr. Mayor. I might recommend that we look at goal number 1 and these draft objectives, and then discuss those, and then go on to. I won't present 2, 3, or 4 until we've had a chance to discuss these. But if we're bogging way down, then maybe we'll want to at least briefly talk about all of the objectives. Is that?
And so real quick question on this. So as we're going through this, we're still, for the viewing audience, whether or not they're at home or here, we're still, going through this process, but it's not like we're stamping this tonight. We are open as we get into our forum or workshop into this outline that's been provided. We just don't want to imply that what we're doing tonight is not moldable or flexible once we get, because we really do want to have that input, at the forum and workshop standpoint as too. I just want to make sure
Yes.
as we go through that.
Yes, thank you. And I based on the discussion we just had, my sense is that we're going to be quite close on a council set of draft goals that we could have available for the public to comment on and consider and provide input to. And then we're going to start now looking at some draft objectives. We've got a total of 23 across 4 goals, draft objectives, and then 2 documents full of fantastic ideas from the community of other things the community wants to see done. And hopefully where we'll be is that at the community forum next week, we'll have these 4 goals that are quite well shaken out, and a initial set of objectives that are nicely shaken out, perhaps, and then this other vast body of great ideas, and I don't mean that negatively at all, I mean it very positively, that the community then can provide input on and say, hey, this one that you're sort of close to, I don't like that one, or this one over here that somebody recommended, we think that's really important and needs to get voted onto the island. So that was a long way of saying yes.
And one other real quick question, sorry. So after getting through the objectives, we talked about a mission statement as well. So we're going to get into that discussion as well.
If there's time available and if the council would like to, I would not recommend that we hold up the goal-setting process until we have the final crafted mission statement that we want to have. Also note, as we're going to, if we get there, that the community, not the staff or the council, but the community is developing a community vision and values statements as part of the general plan process. So the general plan advisory committee is actually, they have I think a final draft vision of the community, values of the community. The mission statement is likely a little more tailored and almost more of a staff mission statement of what is the staff doing to achieve whatever purpose you have for them. But we're prepared to start talking about that tonight, but it's more important, I think, that we really focus on the objectives, because if we draft our goals and objectives, we can start through the budget process. We can come back to you over the 6 or 8 or 10 weeks ahead to nail down a mission statement.
And so the mission statement will be part of the discussion at the workshop as well?
It could be.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay, so this is goal number 1, which, again, we've termed an essential goal, and there are 6 draft objectives associated with that. There are 5 in the staff report, number 2 through 6 shown on the screen, and we have added 1 since based on good input since the staff report was released. So these again are the goal is to complete the water reclamation facility project and the One Water program. Potential objectives that are key critical objectives associated with this goal is number 1, to complete, and the wording on this one's not great, complete a water sewer rate study and bring to council for Prop 218 process consideration any increased requirements to fund the proposed WRF. A second objective is following CEQA guidelines to bring the water reclamation facility environmental impact report to council for approval and certification. That'll be in November. Draft it due late summer. Number 3, complete and submit the state revolving fund loan application with the State Water Control Board for the WRF project to secure funding for the project. Number 4, take appropriate selection action and bring to council for approval a contract for the design, build, construction, delivery of the new water reclamation facility. Number 5, take all appropriate actions and bring to council for information/approval as required, information that will allow the city to make a decision to achieve water independence, including weaning off state water and appropriately disposing of, likely leasing, our state water allocation. And finally, budget for, select a consultant, complete, and bring to council for initial consideration a, quote, One Water plan for the city that considers all water resources from stormwater to groundwater to wastewater as a single water resource. So those are 6 potential objectives associated with that goal.
Great. And we'll start off with comments and questions, and I'll just kind of start in the same order. Red, I'll start you off as our lead on this, and we'll go from left to right if you want to lead us off on that.
I'm okay as presented.
Matt?
Again, I go back to the time frame when I asked before, knowing that this Prop 218 process, we'll be starting this before fiscal year 18 if we're going to do this, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Actually, that's a great point. We should probably leave it on here, but if we achieve our current timeline, we'll be complete with that before the new fiscal year starts.
Okay. So I understand, and that's all I have to ask.
Okay, great. John?
Thanks, Dave. where would land acquisition fall with regard to a specific objective and/or within any of these objectives?
Land acquisition
Or does it deserve?
Could be this fiscal year. I'm sorry, yes, this planning year. We can't do it until after the EIR is certified. That'll be November. So likely we could be working to close within the planning year that we're talking about. That's on the task list. It's on the program for the reclamation facility. It could be included as an objective. It's because we have an MOU. The really big piece of this is to complete the EIR, and as soon as the EIR is done, actually, I think we're compelled by the MOU to close fairly soon after that. So I don't feel a requirement to make an objective specifically related to it, but we certainly could.
In terms of project scope, I'm assuming that you're considering that's going to fall under the EIR. We've had a lot of discussion about additional city-related facilities either being included on the WRF site or not, et cetera. Where does that all fall, that decision-making fall within regard to all this here?
I'll let Rob expound, but that is being adjudicated in the EIR process.
And even if it's environmentally feasible to construct those facilities at that location, council has to just decide what they actually want to construct when we go out to bid in the design build document. So there will be a couple of chances to discuss that item.
That was what Mr. Petoni just whispered in my ear also, is that under Objective 4, to take all appropriate action for the council to approve a contract for design build construction, that discussion will have to have taken place and be complete before we issued a construction contract.
So it falls under number 4 then, is the answer. Good. Thank you, Mr. Petoni, for that. Could have been easily answered. Thanks. Appreciate that. That's all I have.
Marlis?
Yeah, the only thing I had was whether or not the Prop 218 would be completed in time, or should we include it on this year's objective? So you've already done that for me. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm good with everyone's comments at this point, so ready to move on. Thanks. Fred?
Yeah, I do have one more question, if that's okay. We're going to certify the EIR on November 14th. That's on our calendar. Don't we have to do that before we apply for the state revolving fund loan?
Yes, so the time, I just added some months down here.
Okay.
So number 1, we're planning to be complete in June. Number 2 should be complete, certified in November. Number 3 will be submitted in December after the EIR is certified in November. Okay. Number 4 is springtime on the program management 5-year task list for the WRF project.
Okay.
And the One Water RFP is?
It's out.
Out.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Ready to go. Okay,
great. Goal 2, so draft objectives for Goal 2. There are 2 pages of this on the screen. This is, again, termed an essential goal to achieve economic and fiscal sustainability. Objective number 1, and I'll comment that this is a bit of an overview objective. It's not. It describes a little bit how we want to go about this and what the result might be. It is not technically perfectly measurable, except in how. So it's not something to complete. It's something to keep in mind and to guide our process. But it's important that it's in there, I think. So number 1 is to promote a balanced economic development approach that retains, expands, and attracts businesses for a strong, stable, complementary, and diverse business environment, including tourism, coastal resources, redevelopment, and conservation. Objective number 2 is a draft to pursue opportunities and relationships that may result in the demolition, remediation, and complete redevelopment of the Morro Bay Power Plant in a way that will increase transient occupancy tax, property tax, and sales tax revenue while converting a portion of the existing property for public use, such as recreation areas, parks, and paths. Objective number 3, proposed, is to take appropriate action, including implementation of specific programs to increase shoulder season and off-season TOT producing visitor nights by 10% over fiscal year 17 levels. Number 4, to research and bring to council for decision incentive programs that would reasonably result in the renovation of some existing hotel stock and deliver higher average daily rates and thus higher TOT revenues. And just comment that Mr. Alexander's comment was a excellent example of an incentive program that would be one that we should consider to achieve this sort of thing. Number 5, to facilitate private revitalization and redevelopment activities that will result in planning approval for a 3% increase in number of hotel rooms in the city. Number 4, to help ensure a sound and sustainable financial plan for addressing increasing CalPERS costs. Number 7, to take proactive action to facilitate the revitalization of underused and unused parcels in commercial districts, including encouraging sales tax producing digital or other non-impactful industries and businesses providing multiple head of household jobs. And number 8, to research and bring to council various approaches for paid parking in the downtown and/or Embarcadero areas, including consideration of public-private partnership to develop, we should say, one or two parking structures. I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry.
Okay, once again, we'll start it off with Red on the left and work it to the right. Red, you're starting us off today.
Thanks. The power plant has always been something that we've discussed very positively in terms of producing revenue for the city. But to me, a much more exciting location is the current wastewater treatment plant. And you've included that under Goal 4, city land use plans, with the possibility of moving that to Goal 2. To me, the key thing that makes that site so much more attractive is that the city owns it. That gives us the ability to control its use and to directly collect revenues related to development of that property. So to me, that's more valuable and more exciting than the power plant. And that's why I would like to see that move to number 2 as helping our economic development. And one additional exciting aspect of that is, one of my personal goals is to bring more medical services here to Morro Bay, and that would be a great location for a medical center that could serve the entire coastal community from Los Osos to Cambria. And since we own the site, that gives us the ability to offer incentives to a contractor to build a medical center. So that's my comment.
Matt?
Yeah, Dave, I do have a question about number 2. In terms of these different objectives, is this a objective for staff, or is this just generally understood that it will be staff, it will be TBID, it will be the various parties that would think about economic development will be just included within goal number 2? And then by saying that, should it be stated or is it just understood?
It's a fantastic point. I would state that that if it's simply the staff and only the staff that is trying to achieve goal number 2, the city of Morro Bay will never achieve goal number 2. I think it's crucial for the council to identify a goal, identify some objectives, and then for all of us, council, staff, community, business organizations, local leaders, to buy in and share achieving those things. So many of these talk about facilitating, talk about working with, being proactive. I think it's unlikely the government's going to increase the number of hotel rooms in Morro Bay by 3% for planning this year. But can we help facilitate that with private investment, local business owners? Absolutely. So we should capture that sentiment somewhere in here. I agree.
Thanks, Matt. John?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So for me, one of the things that I think might be interesting to look at, possibly fitting under goal number 4, or objective number 4, or what is it, goal or objective? Objective. Where we are looking at the hotel stock. I think the comments that have been made about renovation are outstanding, and the opportunities for incentive programs for such are good ideas. However, I think there needs to be an evaluation in that and a determination of the type of inventory that we might be looking at ending up with when that renovation is complete. For instance, and I make no specific argument with regard to the quality across the board of hotels that we have, but when you look at possibly some of the attractive entities that are out there, for instance, corporate retreats, one of the reasons they don't come is that there aren't adequate resources in the community for that with regard to hotel stock and or possibly equipment, et cetera, that would service that. So I want to be able to somehow capture that in, Dave, in what you're doing and what you're saying. The incentive programs that would result in renovation. I think the renovation could be more than just a facelift, but could also be a qualitative lift, if you will, in terms of the type of inventory that we have available. Our occupancy rate's 60%, so certainly there's excess inventory. It may well be the type of inventory that's important. 2, number 6, I would remove CalPERS. Again, I just don't think that's it. There are many more issues, capital budget, streets, as you've mentioned, rising costs of paying employees, et cetera, and there are a number of cost areas that I think have to be looked at. So I'd make that more general. The third comment I would make is, I think in the short term, revenue enhancement is critical, and you've identified, I think, some issues that might contribute to revenue enhancement, but I think there should be a general evaluation of benchmarking with other cities to look at other potential revenue enhancing opportunities that we might be able to undertake. And I could give examples of that, but I think at the conference we all went to, we heard a number of examples of what those were. So revenue enhancement becomes, in general, an important thing that I think we need to look at. And then however you fit it, most of the discussion that I've heard recently, and especially at the conference that we went to this past week, is cities need to have not only just a 10-year look at their city in terms of revenues versus expenses, but a 10-year financial plan and a 10-year capital plan. And the capital plan would be, taking inventory and stock of what we have and what will become obsolete when and what the replacement requirements are going to be. And then also prudently plan from the standpoint of the long-term financial plan, really what the specifics are within those categories. And I know you're well on the way of developing that with with Leland. And so I think that that's something that I would include. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Marlis?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
We're doing great on time. We've got some great notes. Could I just read back a couple of those and just and see if I've sort of captured that from...
Absolutely. Yep.
So, Mr. Davis's comment on the 26-acre Atascadero Road site, actually we had that objective also under achieve economic and fiscal sustainability. Had it in two places, worded two different ways, and we'll certainly go back and take a look at it. So it was under achieve fiscal sustainability in the wording of essentially begin outreach to potential partners, developers looking at that 26 acres, but then also had it on land use plans to start the community conversation on what the community might want to see there, would accept there. So there was, and just to have 23 objectives instead of 24, we whittled one of them off. But I just wanted you hear that, and we'll communicate on that, or we'll talk on that and figure out if it's best to have it one place or two places, and come back to you on that. One of the things, Mr. Heading's comments on, we will tomorrow, now that this goal has likely made it through final draft stage, reach out to business groups into the community to get their input on what objectives specifically related to short-term revenue improvements to the various boards and to business groups would they recommend that you consider, because belying some of my prejudice, but the government doesn't always have all the answers, the best ones. And one thing I would ask the council to consider if you wanted to provide input is we're actually meeting, so Visit SLO County, the County Tourism Board, is engaged in a significant effort to consider not really if, but where to try to locate a sizable conference center. I didn't say convention center. This isn't Vegas, but a sizable conference center in the county. And the council might want to consider, we have two locations that could be conference center locations. You could likely have a conference center at the 26-acre Atascadero Road site. You could certainly fit a conference center at the Morro Bay Power Plant were it to be redeveloped. So we didn't put this on there, but you might want to have a conversation and give us some direction on whether to specifically pursue that with Visit SLO County and to advertise those sites essentially as potential conference center locations. That's it. Thank you.
Marlis.
Okay. First, a question. I know that you have talked in the past about an economic development plan, and I'm just wondering what the current status of that is.
Yeah, so talked with Jabin, contracting out with Jabin. She actually just emailed me, and she's sending over the final, the rough draft of the final document later this week, so Friday. So there's a final document coming out. With that final document, the deliverables are they're going to come and present to you, to City Council, everything in that final plan. And so that's kind of when the rough comes out, we can forward it over to you, Marlis, if that helps, the final document.
Well, I guess I'm thinking about how does that interrelate with these goals for next year. So is there consistency? Are we going to try to weave those into our planning for next year? That's really what I was getting at.
We should absolutely consider adding an objective under goal number 2 that relates to receipt of the Economic Development Strategic Plan. Yep. And bringing to council specific implementation items this coming fiscal year. So we've been in this position before where because we're thankfully 5 months ahead of the curve here, not trying to figure out in June 28th what we're going to do, that it would be wise to give reference to that and to note that is something that we want to. So we'll word that and add it to this, and then let it be up for debate through the community forum and the next.
Well, if we actually receive it and look at it, we can see how it compares to what our objectives are for the coming year. So we can see how they mesh. But I just wanted to know when we would have it. Okay, objective number 5 about a 3% increase in the number of hotel rooms in the city. I'm just wondering if this is realistic, given that occupancy is pretty stable. It's not. We don't have full occupancy. We're at 60%, and I'm wondering how the other existing hotels would feel about that goal or objective.
Without having our tourism super expert sitting here, I would hearken to Mr. Heading's comments a couple minutes ago that we have, if you look on Google or TripAdvisor or something, we have, I believe it's 1 3-star hotel, and pretty much the rest of them are in the 2-star range. We have a few small boutique hotels, and I would suggest that their occupancy rate is probably measurably higher than some of the other motels that we have many rooms in, and thus to Mr. Heading's comment that we likely have growth capacity in the 3-star, 4-star boutique hospitality venues that doesn't show up when you just look at broad occupancy numbers.
Okay, thanks. And I'm wondering if you might consider adding an objective that relates to some evaluation of just the current staffing levels that we have, so that we're looking for some cost efficiencies or more effective ways of doing things, since everything that we've talked about so far has to do with increasing revenues, and we might also need to be looking at ways we can somehow cut costs. And my last comment, let's see, this pertains to objective number 8, various approaches for paid parking in downtown and the Embarcadero. And this may just be that because I'm a new council member, have we already made a decision that we want to have paid parking? Wouldn't that be the prior step of determining whether or not that's a good idea? Looking at the costs and benefits and whether or not the community wants that before we look at approaches, or would that be considered part of that objective?
As written, and this appeared here for a variety of reasons, listening to individual input of some of the community input that we received, some council input, staff discussion, so that's sort of how this got on here. We also have a parking management plan that says consider doing this. The way it's written was not to be stated that we will, but to bring approaches for council consideration and direction of if we would. So I don't think that their staff doesn't feel like the council certainly hasn't given any direction that we are going to do this, and this was not intended to be worded in a way that said we're going to do it, but to bring the opportunity to you.
Our outreach on the general plan and LCP has also backed this and said, the input from the public is go look at these things in your downtown and in the Embarcadero, and that's coming forward in draft formats as early as February 2nd when we have our next general plan workshop. We'll be vetting some of these things for the downtown waterfront strategic plan process.
Yeah, I guess I was just talking about the way it's worded. It makes it sound like we've already decided we're having paid parking, and I think that is a decision that the council has to make before we look at alternative approaches for doing it. That's all.
Mr. Peroni, I recommend that we add various approaches for consideration of paid parking.
That will help.
Great, Marlos, thanks. I'll just pick up on that one since that was what was Marlos was ending on. Looking at the language of that, great addition to the language as far as what we will consider and that. Just wanted to add, as we have discussed parking and parking options, both with our general plan advisory committee, just add some language in there, considering a parking district and a parking district assessment. So if we're looking at paid parking, we would be looking at options. So as we're talking about paid parking, is there an option to what would a parking district, a parking assessment district be if we're considering all that? And then if the language is talking about developing parking structures, certainly in the parking management plan, there's options that aren't necessarily parking structures, but parking designs, alternative designs within the streets and stuff that we have. So I would like to make sure that, that remains as far as the option and not we're just focused on structures, because I think there's some quick, easy opportunities for us in that regard. And then on goal number
Mr. Mayor?
1, yes, sir.
Could I appreciate that very much. It's a good conversation. Just want to sort of clarify. So this is under the goal of achieve economic and fiscal sustainability. It really, the core of it was, frankly, to consider paid parking as a source of revenue. That's the underlying issue here. Then it also refers to public-private partnerships to develop parking structures. Mm-hmm. Completely agree that there are other parking approaches that we actually should consider, and broader parking issues. So we might want to consider actually under land use plans something that talks about wrestling with and bringing to council a discussion on the future of parking in Morro Bay. We'll figure out the right way to word it. So that's one way to deal with that, because some of those things are not so much revenue enhancement as planning.
Great to clarify, and kind of when we get into the mixing and matching of consideration of private-public partnerships to develop parking structure, we're getting to that mix and matching, right? So I think great conversation. We can probably work out how we go from here.
Great.
Okay.
I also, since we're on that one, that's one of the things I circled to make sure that the council is comfortable with us. So if this, we've got a month to worry about it, but if, for example, if this objective ends up being adopted, then your staff is going to take under direction that you would like us to work towards seeking out public-private partnerships that might result in a parking structure. And if we're not comfortable with having a parking structure in Morro Bay, then we shouldn't put that in there. And so that's, I just wanted to note that these are, we should wrestle hard with what the words are in here so that we're all on the same sheet and staff isn't sort of wasting time working with somebody to consider a parking structure if we really don't want a parking structure.
A structure doesn't necessarily mean a 6-story behemoth.
Absolutely.
So
right.
Structure just speaks to the infrastructure for developing the structure, and I think I'm absolutely not opposed to that. I'm for that. So, and to be determined.
Okay. Let me finish my comments and then we'll go on that. Objective number 1, promote a balanced economic development approach that retains, expands, and attracts businesses for a strong, stable, et cetera. When I read that, I think to myself, a TOT rebate program would fit into that objective. Would that be correct? Goal number 1?
If it were me, I'd include TOT. On objective number 4, where it says incentive program, the number 1 incentive program on our mind is a TOT rebate program. So that's where, and that's because that specifically talks about hotel stock I think there's other incentive programs, and maybe we should include in objective number 1 a reference to incentive programs to help achieve some of these things, because there's other incentive programs that we might use as a city to help attract business, develop two-story multi-use, revitalize underused lots downtown into two-story multi-use. But if it's TOT and rebate program, I think that falls well under 4, because that one's talking specifically about hotels.
Okay. As long as we capture that, I think is good input, and I just want to see that it falls in there. And then on objective number 2 for the Moore Bay Power Plant, great discussion on that. Just a couple additives on there. When we look at the big picture of that, and I agree, I think we do need to maintain some connection and focus on that. There's a lot of moving parts, and we do want to maintain some connection and relationship with that. But things that come to mind when we're talking about while converting a portion of the existing property for public use, such as recreation areas, parks, and paths, we have water in there and stormwater as opportunities as well. And I just want to make sure that we're considering our options there, considering there's a water well on that property, and the importance of that. And those are my comments, and then we can move on. Looks like we're about 5 to 5, and we want to get through all these. Red? Yeah.
When I look again at objective number 1, I don't see any metric for that. I don't see any way to measure that. And I wonder if we could take Marlis's suggestion, implement the economic development strategic plan, and put that in number 1.
We're smiling because I was on the cell phone listening to Dana and Craig as we debated whether this should go in there, and it didn't have a metric, but it was sort of an overall describes as how we want to approach this with balance. But yeah, I think that's probably that may fit very well if the staff could wrestle with that and wordsmith it some. But that might be a great place to note that.
Okay, group. Moving on to goal number 3.
Sorry, I was just checking my notes on. I heard at least 2 council members, I think, express an interest in specifically stating TOT rebate program somewhere in here, likely in objective 4. That is there a sort of a sense of the council that would be, because that's a very specific thing, and that gives us some great direction. So I think I'm seeing general consensus to do that. Thank you. So draft objectives for goal number 3. The goal is an important goal, but not an essential goal. So as we're working prioritization, to improve infrastructure and public spaces. Number 1 is to bring to council for decision an item to consider adding a street improvement tax measure to the November 2018 ballot. I'll just make a parenthetical comment here that last council meeting, the council clearly said don't consider any tax measure until November 2018 at the earliest. Sort of consistent with that, if we are going to consider something in November 2018, we will need to start thinking about it in this fiscal year that we're talking about, thus why we put that on there. We're not trying to get ahead of the council saying don't do anything until November 2018, but if indeed we want to do that, we're going to need to be starting work on that this time next year to have a great campaign. Number 2, to budget for and complete planning for rebuilding of the city-owned access road between the Coast Guard Station and the fish dock in conjunction with planned redevelopment of the Verge's lease site. Number 3, to seek partnerships and bring to council for consideration that will result in the construction of 1 or 2 moderately sized parking garages in the waterfront downtown areas of the cities. looking at this now, we could consider modifying that previous objective. I'm not sure that parking structure has to be on that previous objective if we have it here. And then number 4, to bring to council for decision proposals that result in a public-private partnership redevelopment of the city-owned Market Plaza property consisting of the DeStasio's parcel and, if appropriate, to be included in redevelopment, the Front Street parking lot, which is below DeStasio's, and the parking lot at Pacific and Market. That's all we've got for this one right now. Mr. Mayor?
Thanks, and we'll continue with Red leading us off on this conversation.
I'm sorry, if I, just to clarify number 4 there, so we are currently on the glide path to bring to the council for consideration a request for qualification process for that Market Street or Market Plaza area, which is the Front Street parking lot and DeStasio's above it. So you're going to likely hear about that in the next 3 to 4 council meetings, and then this sort of presages that that if we, as a council, determine to move forward to that we'll actually be working through receipt of some proposals on that. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know where the fish dock is. Is that the T pier?
It is the Santa Maria Seafoods. Is that what they are, Eric? The offloading right between Togs and the water.
Okay.
So that road is the road essentially between Togs and the water.
Got
and
it.
It's a
Okay.
pretty key access piece of infrastructure for our waterfront, for our unloading operations there.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Matt?
My question in terms of goal number 3, and it's somewhat connected to economic development, and in terms of the verbiage, improve infrastructure and public spaces, I don't see a mention of a boatyard. And I know the harbor boards brought this up, and it would seem to me, and I understand that it's perhaps low down on the totem pole in terms of planning, but in terms of infrastructure and economic development, I don't know if it where it would belong if it does. And I don't know if that's been discussed at the staff level.
It could certainly be added somewhere. Where we currently are in the process is we're likely about to start a feasibility study. The council has already directed and budgeted for a feasibility study for a future boatyard. Just trying to timeline how that might work out. We could likely have the feasibility study. We probably would have it back and ready for some consideration during the fiscal year, the planning year that we're talking about. So an objective specifically related to that said, based on the feasibility study, to bring to the council, the next step, a decision on a boatyard.
Well, God, I guess, Eric, this goes also to you in terms of maintenance on. And I think you had mentioned one time in different meetings or harbor board in terms of some of the maintenance or regeneration or rebuilding of some of the docks, especially down on the bottom of Beach Street. And if all of these things could ever coincide, is it realistic to put this on a list of objectives for this fiscal year, or no?
We have ongoing. I have no light. Is this on? Yeah, sounds like it's on. I mean, we have ongoing needs and wants, and with all of our waterfront infrastructure, this particular item, in terms of the docks and I guess the street, between the alleyway is a little bit of a different animal, which is why we've put it on here. As far as the boatyard goes, you brought that up. We've got some direction on that already. The other facilities on our waterfront, there's definitely financial and other needs there to get a lot of those projects accomplished. I don't know. I think feeding it through the regular budgeting process is probably the more proper way to go. I don't know if we need to go to goals on just the normal infrastructure stuff. I think goals kind of is for the things that rise above the norm and things that need special attention.
Okay. And no, I understand that. I understand that we're going out in terms of that feasibility study, and I'm just wondering, knowing that there isn't a great deal of money out there to, if this feasibility study came back wonderful, we still can't necessarily break ground the next day. So I don't know if in terms of this year's objective underneath infrastructure, perhaps, I don't know how much more about a boatyard we could put besides the feasibility study, realistically.
And I think boatyard, since it's not built, doesn't fit in my mind necessarily under the infrastructure goal just yet. Maybe if and when it gets built, it would. To me, it's more on the economic development and revitalization goals where it may more properly fit, because it's an economic driver. If and when it can feasibly be built, it would be an economic driver. At that point, it would turn into infrastructure afterwards.
Okay, well, thanks. I'm sorry to belabor this, but could I ask staff to consider that when we take this back in terms of if it belongs and where it would go? Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Absolutely. Sorry, if I could just absolutely, and if there's other council input on that, that'd be great to hear. I do want to be cautious about, as our first public comment last meeting said, we need to realize that we have a significant financial situation. And it would be great to have a vibrant boatyard in Morro Bay, but just to be clear-eyed about what we know so far, that there was a market analysis done. If that market analysis was accurate, in other words, if we can rely on it, it said there's probably $2 million a year, if I recall, of total boatyard business in Morro Bay. Assessing the economic impact or driverness of that goes beyond simply sales tax or something like that. There are head of household jobs potentially created and other tertiary impacts. But in the big scheme of things, $2 million worth of business may not be the economic driver that we think it might be.
No, and point well taken.
Sales tax received by the city on $2 million gross is $20,000 a year.
No, I understand your point, but in terms of looking at these two areas in the goals, I'm like, understanding that this has come up a number of times, and if it should turn out to be dismissed and saying, hey, given the economic realities of right now, it's not on the table right now. So I understand your point. I just wanted to put it out there.
If I just say, to be clear, I was not stating at all that we shouldn't complete the feasibility study, that having a boatyard would be great, and that because of what we've invested to this point, both in terms of money and in terms of discussion and community sort of capital, I would be very supportive of including an objective that addressed receiving the feasibility study and making the next determination on it. I just wanted to be caution all of us on how much economic impact we think we're going to get from certain things around the city, that's all I wanted to do.
Can I make one more point?
Sure.
Okay, I understand your point, and perhaps since this is kind of low-hanging fruit and it's already in the process, perhaps, and given the point of too many objectives and creating just too much, understanding perhaps then, since the feasibility study is moving ahead, perhaps then it doesn't, simply because I understand your point is well taken.
Thanks, Matt. John?
Maybe a question for Rob. Is the Highway 41 interchange project, will that have any impact this year regarding possible expenditures and or infrastructure issues for us?
The work anticipated for this year and probably into next has already been programmed. We're using CMB grant funds with a city match, so that's already been programmed. We're probably looking at 2019 as a potential need for construction dollars for roundabout there.
So
or
nothing
intersection improvements.
Yeah, or whatever it might be. So nothing that we need to add that you would want to see added this year in terms of any planning or issues that are big enough to include as a specific objective was really the question, I guess.
I think there's a few things up in the air right now with the potential for infrastructure funding on the federal level and a renewed vigor in Sacramento for some sort of transportation funding bill that we really need to see how that shakes out first.
Okay, great. And then just to add on comment on the capital 10-year plan, that it should include infrastructure and important infrastructure development, and doesn't necessarily need to be ferreted out here, but I think it's important to include in that 10-year capital plan. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Marlis?
Yeah. I guess I kind of have a question here. When you talk, I know that we don't have a goal related to maintenance per se, because that's a basic city function, but if we don't believe that it's really being handled properly, should we have it as a goal to improve maintenance of our facilities? And I'm thinking about just taking care of some basic repairs and making sure that things are, the toilets are cleaned, and we have some problems that I'm not sure how we get it in as an objective if it's a normal city operation, but we think it needs improvement.
We had several objectives addressing those sort of items last year under both infrastructure and improved city operations. We had objectives relating to more street tree trimming, and I don't recall if there was one related to bathrooms. I think there actually was, to bathroom cleaning. Our sense right now is we've got it about right, but if we don't, and if it's a maintenance issue and not a capital issue, which is another problem, then those could certainly be considered likely under Goal 3 infrastructure. Maintenance of public spaces would fall right in here.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of a couple of things where I like the stairs that go up to Surf Street that are dangerous. Something like that. Is that something you would routinely take care of, or would we need to? I mean, do we identify things in the city where, like a fence is falling down, or things really need to be repaired? I'm not now talking about maintenance, but repairing.
Perfect. So Rob and his team are actually right now getting a rough cost estimate, for example, to replace the Surf Street stairs. And we're going to bring that through you in the budget process as part of the maintenance schedule in the budget process. So if it's capital improvements or repair, then we'd love to get that input from you and every member of the community and tee those things up. And then as we go through the budget process, we can prioritize those and see how much money there is to do what. If it's maintenance like cleaning and those sort of things, then we would do the same thing. Yes.
Okay, so we don't need an objective per se.
I don't think it's required.
Okay.
What is very helpful is to have that input from council members, from community members on here are the repair or capital improvement items that we want to see, so that the staff can put those all on a list and then we can work and prioritize them. You can prioritize them in the budget process.
Yeah, just so we recognize that we need to be doing that also, I think, is what I'm getting at.
Yes.
Then on objective number 3, again, since we just talked about that and we said it would be included in the prior goal, do we need to repeat it? And again, this assumes we've already decided we're going to build 2 moderately sized parking garages.
In looking at this more fully now, unless otherwise directed, I think what we will do is we will recraft objective number 8 under goal 2 that related to paid parking, recraft that to be specifically paid parking oriented, because it was a revenue thing that put that on there. We'll pull parking garages out of that one, and if you'd like, with your with your direction, to recraft objective number 3 under infrastructure and public spaces as a broader parking objective that would include not only parking garages, but some of the great things Mayor Irons was noting of restriping and other parking improvements. So sort of a broad parking plan. And I think there's community consensus that having that discussion is an important discussion to have.
Yeah, it could go either way,
Yeah.
either place, actually, but just so we don't imply that that's already been decided.
Okay, Marlis?
Thanks.
Okay, great. I have a couple of items that I have as lists from input from constituents, emails, probably over the last year or so. And I'm sure probably some of them have been forwarded on, but I'm just bringing them up as it comes into public spaces. Marla's touched on some of those, and great to hear that, as a course of maintenance, whether it's the stairs or anything like that, we'll kind of look at that, the budget. But considering you're looking for input, one of the particular ones that came to mind was trash cans continues to come up. But one of the comments regarding closures for trash cans, we'll have public trash cans, but they're open virtually. So whether it's windy or whether the seagulls are out, when we're talking about enhancing our public spaces, we have open public trash receptacles that continue to not contain the trash that they're supposed to because they're open. So basically the information that came to me was basically somehow we can, whether or not it's a policy where we have public trash cans are required to be closed so they can contain trash and not be blown out, and the seagulls don't have their pleasures. Sorry, but that was just public input that came to me. I just wanted to relay that.
Great, thanks.
And then also on this, I don't know if this is necessarily the right one, but on item number 2, where budget for complete planning for rebuilding city-owned access road between the U.S. Coast Guard Station, my note here also is the Coast Guard Station. So we've had conversations with the Coast Guard, and I know it's kind of in their court, but I would like to be able to focus, which is why I'm bringing this up under goals, to work with the Coast Guard and make sure that we can cooperatively partner and get a Coast Guard facility built. We've been working with them for some time. If it's not a goal, we're not having that conversation on a regular basis. We're kind of waiting for them. I'd like to kind of initiate a little bit more proactive conversation with the Coast Guard and make sure that, and for some of the information, the community, there has been an ongoing conversation with the Coast Guard to rebuild their facility. There are funds allocated. I just want to refocus some efforts on that Coast Guard facility. So not sure it falls into this, but when I see that we're going to rebuild that area, we also have a Coast Guard facility that is talked about being rebuilt, and we should probably time some of that.
Yeah.
So I just want to bring that to the table as far as how we view that as an objective this year. And I think that's all for this. And Matt, he brought up the boat haul out, and I think we had discussion on that. Those are my only comments for goal number 3.
Okay, thank you.
And any follow-up?
Just, the restrooms keep coming up.
Yeah.
And I had that on my list,
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
I didn't mention it. I didn't know if it was big enough. But, I know it's a routine thing, but I continue to hear it.
Yep, yeah.
So.
Yeah, and
Good.
especially the bathrooms at Del Mar Park, that keeps coming up again and again, and I don't know what we can do about them aside from replacing them, but it's a big issue.
And that's why we're bringing it up.
That's right.
Good, okay, thanks.
So we, one of the things that you'll get to wrestle with in the budget process is whether to spend $250,000 probably. $250,000 to replace the Del Mar Park bathroom. We are absolutely going to put that on the list and let you prioritize it wherever you think it should be prioritized, along with Surf Street stairs and the various other things, and then we'll look at where the budget line is and see how much of it we can actually pay for. And just by way of update on the Coast Guard Station, so definitely appreciate Ideally, there is a Coast Guard station, harbor, office, verges, rebuild, all going on at the same time, and all of that comes together along with rebuilding that road, and we can get lots of that road done without spending our money on it. And we're got that in our sights. The council has already given very clear direction on the Coast Guard station and the harbor office way ahead. Last summer, I think we received it, and we're in very close contact with the Coast Guard, and we'll continue to do that. Eric and I bug Eric about it every other week. Ish. But considering including that as sort of synchronizing those construction efforts makes lots of sense. So we're doing pretty well on time here. We've got the last goal to consider some objectives for. This is goal number 4, to review and update significant city land use plans. Objective number 1 is to complete the general plan, local coastal plan rewrite that was approved and started in fiscal year 16. We should put a little smiley face and exclamation point after that, because this fiscal year we should reasonably complete the general plan, local coastal plan, and have it done. Number 2, complete the zoning code update approved and started in FY17. And then number 3, to bring to council for consideration the results of code enforcement outreach on existing codes related to boat, RV, and trailer parking and/or storage on city streets and neighborhoods. Actually think that'll be going to Planning Commission in the next month or two. And then number 4, to bring to council for adoption a rewrite of the secondary unit ordinance that was updated this last year, but based on changes of state law, it's got to be updated. Scott can delve into that if you'd like it. And then to begin the community outreach portion and council discussion on the future use of the Tascadero Road site, the existing wastewater treatment. What we envision here is to start that community discussion this year to really identify the bounds of acceptability of what could be there in this planning year, so that the next planning year we can formally master plan it. And then that'll be 3 years, 2.5 years actually, away from the completion of the new wastewater treatment facility and the demolition and remediation of the existing site. And will be about the right time to have a master plan to complete, to then go out to potential partners to say, here's what the city wants there. Do you want to work with us on it? Okay, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, great. And Red, start us off.
I'm good with all this.
Okay, good. Matt?
Yeah, Scott, I have a couple questions for you in terms of the general plan and looking at number 3 and number 4. So my 2 questions correspond to vacation rentals, if that needs to be explicitly stated under objectives, and then I think under number 4, affordable housing. Do those, in your estimation, need to be expressly stated? I know there's a big interest community-wide in this last year, so what do you think?
So vacation rentals, we will be working on that as we roll through the zoning code update. So part of the general plan LCP zoning code update process, we'll have that discussion as part of that. We haven't gotten to that phase of the update yet. We're just now working on land use. We came to you at the joint meeting recently to get some direction on key issues and policies. We got that from you. So now we're going to be heading off in the direction of policy development. So we're just now starting policy development for the general plan. And when we're done with that, we'll be doing the zoning code portion of that, which is where the vacation rental concepts will live. So that'll be on down the road. You can put it in here. It'll be something we'll be doing. We're going to be doing it regardless because we have to. Our moratorium that's in place right now with the 250 cap ends in June of 2018. We should be having all of our land use and general plan and zoning code documents hopefully completed through the city and hopefully certified by Coastal by then.
So by in saying that, you're simply because of the interest that was expressed community-wide, these two things are going to be done or being handled within the process, correct?
If you want to put it on a list, you certainly can.
And that's what I'm just saying, since they're
I'll be doing it anyway.
Okay.
So it's entirely up to you. If you want it on a list, and so it's no one loses track of it, don't worry, I'm not losing track of it because we do have the clock's kind of ticking, and we do have an end date when the moratorium goes away, and I plan on having policies in place to address the issue then. So
No, thank you very much, and I would feel better to have those on there. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, great. John?
No comments. Thanks.
Marlos?
I just wanted to clarify, did you suggest that one of these was actually happening in this fiscal year as opposed to next fiscal year?
Were you talking about the code enforcement portion that David referenced?
Yeah.
We did have the council sort of push pause on the proactive code enforcement policy. We did go out and do some outreach on it. We got quite a bit of input back, and I was going to be moving forward to Planning Commission to get their input on where we're at. That was the direction the council gave me. Probably in the next month, as Dave said, in the next month or two, it'll either be in February coming up here, or it might be moving into March, but probably February.
I'm just wondering if we won't have accomplished that in this fiscal year as opposed to an objective for next fiscal year.
We love it when we get to cross things off the list before the year starts. We thought that through a little bit, and since it was not captured on last year's objectives, and it was a pretty significant community discussion on and based on the outcome, you may want to consider, you might not want to, but you might want to consider actually rewriting some of our municipal code. That will likely stretch into this planning year. Might not if you don't want to change anything, but if we want to start thinking about modifying our municipal code, then it will almost certainly stretch into this year.
Okay. And then the only thing that I was thinking about that we might want to think about adding is making some decisions about the Chevron property. I don't know if that is likely to happen, but I know that there are some discussions underway about what's going to happen with that property, and the city is involved, and we could be...
So you're referring to the Chevron property that's on the outside
Yes.
of the city limits on the north side? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. We are currently having conversations about it. Our general plan advisory committee is talking about it. Talked about it at their last meeting. I have a meeting at Supervisor Gibson's office on Friday. So these are active conversations that are happening. So keeping you apprised of those types of things as a goal might be something you could put in there. Where we're at any given time, we could certainly give updates, as to conversations we've had to that point.
Yeah, so you're just suggesting that's part of your everyday work, and we don't need to add it as an objective.
When and if the city needs to make decisions on it, you can bet that I'll be sitting here in front of you
right.
asking for input.
Great.
And it is absolutely part of the general plan update process. It deals with our sphere of influence and our planning area, and those things will be coming for decision before the council probably numerous times. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I just add that when we're in the driver's seat on something like the 26-acre Tascadero Road site, then those are things that we can control. When we're adjacent to something that's going on, then because we for the objectives to be feasible and measurable and achievable, we might not be able to. We're not in the driver's seat to make any decisions on the Chevron property, for example, but we are in the driver's seat to do things about some of these others.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, great, Marlos. Just wanted to, Matt, thanks for bringing up the comments about some of the housing plans and stuff. So I just want to make sure, so that the affordable housing was part of your comments and initiated in there too. Is that right?
Oh, that's actually good. I'm sorry I didn't circle back around. I apologize. So related to affordable housing, this is an ongoing conversation that we're, again, having as part of the general plan and LCP. I mean, I keep saying that. Sorry, broken record. That we're having as part of that. And so it is something that's under consideration and the General Plan Advisory Committee has talked about. It's also something that's an implementation component of the city's existing housing element.
Yeah.
And so we're sort of running on multiple paths on that. Is there something specific additionally that you would like us to do, or?
Well, the reason I brought it up is in terms of the secondary housing situation came up last year when we were talking about secondary housing units on properties and vacation rentals. There's also another component of that, which is the affordable housing component that comes up yearly. I guess by bringing up, my question is, and understanding that we have to do it annually, do we need to put in terms of rewriting this, anything in there to say that, to reiterate or make stronger the affordable housing component?
Well, we've been moving forward with implementation of the current housing element. We actually got our densities identified. The housing element identified increasing densities and limiting what could be built in the higher density areas, meaning don't build single-family R1 homes in R4 districts where it's high density, build R4 housing in there on lots where they can accommodate R4 type housing. So we went back and updated our general plan and LCP, and we just got that certified about 3-4 months ago. It's been sitting at Coastal for going back and forth with us for 2 years. We finally got that done. So we've been actively knocking off those types of things that are identified in the housing element. We'll be going through another round of housing element updates after we're done with the general plan LCP update. The housing element's on a separate track from the general plan update and not part of it. So we'll be doing that separately. But we've had conversations internally with the general plan update where at least the general plan advisory committee has expressed significant interest in development of policies related to improving and providing affordable housing.
And I guess that's why I bring it up, knowing and having listening to some of the folks talk about that on the general plan group. It's like, okay, should something more explicit in terms of, I know we have the yearly housing element that we're going to be addressing, but since we're addressing vacation rentals and secondary units, should we put something that explicitly talks about affordable housing within the general plan?
That's entirely up to the council. If there's something else you want us to do, the secondary unit ordinance thing, the state changed the requirements on that, and that is a means by which we provide affordable housing. It's a methodology to do that. We went through and updated it, finally got our secondary unit through the process, or sent it off to Coastal, and then now state changed it, so Coastal's not doing anything with it because they said the ordinance we sent to them is not consistent with state policy, and they're correct. So now we need to fix that. That's probably the next thing that we need to do, considering the sort of limitation on resources, meaning staff time that we have.
Well, besides me asking to put this in, instead
Yeah.
instead of my requesting from council to put this on the general plan, could I then put a request to you to then bring it to the general plan folks and see if they think it needs to be put on there?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So I guess getting back to affordable housing, I just want to follow up on some of the affordable housing issue conversations Matt had, and just identifying affordable housing opportunities. So obviously we have our housing element that help guide us, but I think to identify an affordable housing opportunity goal, that we are not missing opportunities where there is development going on, that we could be involved in that process. I've had some conversations, about different opportunities around here. I just want to ensure that it's not just the policy from the housing element that we have, that we actually focus on affordable housing opportunities and developing units, whether or not that's partnering with what was no, not the developers, but the what's the San Luis Obispo? Pardon me? Exactly. So there are different partners out in the county and around that we can look towards. So I just want to recognize that and just make sure that the opportunities out there aren't missed. So I'm just throwing that as a general, kind of a general statement. I'm sure we can refine that as we go forward. But, as to Matt's point, there's some of the things on there that as we go into our workshop forum, I would expect, if it's not on the list, we would hear from our community on those specific items. So I'm just bringing it up in that format, and maybe we can refine some language to that at that point.
I'd also note that if there is any specific, discrete, feasible, measurable, objective, or idea that the council has, the community has to address affordable housing, then let's hear it and have a discussion and consider working on it. I think what Scott was communicating is that affordable housing writ large is at the front of his mind on everything that comes across his desk. But I'm not sure that there is we didn't identify a specific, discrete objective that we can accomplish this year that addresses affordable housing, other than to look at all of the various things that Scott's working on and consider affordability of housing as a key element of that. But again, if there's anything to stick on here that gets after affordable housing, that'd be great.
Yeah, to be specific, part of our conversation, just looking at the zoning and the city map and everything, Morrow Elementary, I talked specifically about some opportunities there, and not the soccer field or anything like that, but there is a sliver there that is a great opportunity. It's just a matter of engaging the school district and whether or not the city wanted to kind of partner in that effort to help pursue some affordable housing units is one that comes to mind when you're talking about being specific.
Yeah.
Okay.
That could be a very clear, discrete, specific objective to work with the school district to pursue the building of affordable housing units on a specific piece of school property. Then that is that's something that we can sink our teeth into and go get done.
We need to ask, if they want to partner, but the opportunity
Right.
is definitely there, and if we extend the opportunity, maybe that would prompt the conversation. But anyway,
Okay.
I just think that's it for my comments, and then I'm looking around for final comments on this one. John?
Now that I think about that, my thought was that it's incorporated in a number of things, and I agree. But what Matt has said and what the mayor has said, more specifically, not just identifying that, but there are potentially maybe other partners out there. So more broadly, identifying other potential partnership opportunities that might be out there for us to seek the potential development once you have identified your plan as to where and what might be done. So I wouldn't want to be too specific. Wanted to broaden it if possible.
Nice.
Just one more comment. This is actually a question. So I know that there's this concept of teeny houses, and there's quite a bit been written about them. Is that something that you would just naturally consider in doing the zoning part of the plan?
It's part of the discussion, and the GPAC's actually had conversations about it. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, great. I'll turn it back to you.
Okay. So actually, Mr. Mayor, we did it. It's great. We've got maybe 15 minutes. If we wanted to have only a 7-minute break, perhaps recommend you open for public comment. That's one thing you want to do. And if we've got 5 minutes and or 10 minutes after that, I would love to get some initial feedback on a mission statement. If you'd like to take a look at that and just have a short discussion about it.
Okay. How many would like to public comment at this point at here? We have this is public comment for goal setting, so we have 2. So I'll open it for public comment. Please come on up. Welcome. Come on up, Judy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Judy Salamanca, Morro Bay resident. I just have add a couple of words to the economic development goal number 2. A suggestion, if we could go back to that. And on objective number 2, if we could possibly add in, besides recreation areas, parks, and paths, I think cultural and educational amenities could possibly go into that too. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Appreciate it. No more public comment? No? Okay. Here we go. Come on up, Ron.
Ron Reisner, Morro Bay resident. Just a couple of offerings on this process. I would respectfully suggest that council consider adding into, as a boilerplate objective in your goals and objectives process, performance on determined objectives be made part of the performance evaluation process for staff, in particular the department heads, on a semi-annual basis.
Okay, can you say that one more time, please?
Sure, that wasn't very elegant. That
I wouldn't say that, but
no, I did. that you consider embedding in the objectives portion of this goals process that measuring performance toward the implementation of those objectives be made part of the evaluation process for city staff, most particularly the department heads who have the responsibility for that particular objective or a particular objective. I'm sorry, I'm reading some scribble notes, so be a little bit patient with me here. I'll go as fast as I can.
Take your time.
The proposed central goal number 1, a WRF objective, in my humble opinion, must include aggressive fiscal planning, budgeting, and control. And I don't think that it was specifically stated that way. I'd be happy to.
Okay.
I can put this in writing.
That'd be great. No, I mean, that's fine. We want to capture it for sure.
No, that's okay. Yeah. It's much easier. I'd be happy to put it in a memo.
No, keep going.
Okay. Proposed central goal number 2, it might be wise to include in the description consideration of public funding measures. You were talking about how to fund these things, and that was not mentioned. And I don't want to define what a public funding measure might be, but I'll leave that to you. A respectful reminder, the city manager referred to citywide engineering assessment, driving part of the infrastructure budgeting process. And as a member of the Harbor Advisory Board, I would strongly suggest that you focus, that you make part of that process of focusing on waterfront infrastructure. There's some big money issues down there. Central goal number 2, objective number 1, I would suggest include not just redevelopment, but development as well. Irrespective of which goal you end up putting it under, as far as parking is concerned, I would suggest you consider substituting the word facilities for structure.
That's okay. Keep going.
Okay, facilities for, I'm almost done. Facilities for structure, that might solve your quandary. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, Ron, thank you. And if you want to submit some of those in writing, that'd be helpful too. Thank you. And with that, unless there's no other public comment still open? Anybody else? No? Okay, we'll close public comment and bring it back to council. A few more minutes, and then we can have a short recess before our city council meeting starts at 6 o'clock. You want to have some discussions on the mission statement?
Sure.
Those types of things?
I could just briefly throw up one slide here. This is very, very rough, and there's lots of different ways to do this. I guess it's actually on here, and I'll skip to bullet number 3, which we stated earlier, which is that a mission statement is different from a vision and value statement, and some organizations sort of conflate the two, and you'll see a mission statement that's 2 or 3 paragraphs long. We're in the midst of the General Plan Advisory Committee is in the midst of working through a vision statement and statement of values for the city. So mission statements often include both a task, what the organization is supposed to accomplish, and then the purpose or the reason for accomplishing that, sometimes called a purpose. It is normally only essential tasks are included in a mission statement. That's so you don't have a 3-paragraph mission statement that lists every single thing that an organization may do. In Morro Bay, essential tasks are likely public safety and infrastructure. That's probably the same for most cities, as we sort of discussed a little bit 2 weeks ago. If you did a Maslow's hierarchy of needs of the city, you'd probably find infrastructure and public safety, water and streets on the base level, and then as you moved up, you'd get to recreation and social services and other things. But so a way to organize a mission statement might be there at the bottom. The City of Morro Bay provides essential public safety and infrastructure services and selected non-essential services to provide a safe and organized place for residents and visitors to live, work, and play. That's one approach. Less concerned right now about the wording of that, but just to hear some initial council thoughts on a mission statement and how it might jive with a vision statement and process to get through there.
Okay. So maybe we take, briefly the next 5 minutes, and we can just go from Red on down. We'll make some comments on that and wrap it up. Red?
I like the simplicity of the mission statement because, to me, in an organization, the mission statement is the answer to every question that members have about what they're doing or why they're doing it. I'm a little fuzzy about selected non-essential services, and I know that we do provide those. It just seems awkward the way that's worded, and I don't know what to do about it.
Matt?
Knowing that this is just a sample, and I'm looking at the last, half a sentence there after to provide. I'm just wondering, and I don't know necessarily the propriety in terms of what part in this mission statement goes first or last. I'm thinking in terms of the mission statement for my own school where I work, and in terms of who we work for and what we're trying to do. So in terms of the city, I'm not sure that in terms of the essential, what comes first or last in this mission statement. That's a decent start.
Great. John?
I think that this is where you capture the statement quality of life and what the essentials of that might be. And so we move that away from a goal or an objective, and I think it belongs in the mission statement. And then secondary, first blush, I'm not sure how you provide infrastructure services. I don't get that. So maybe that's just wordsmithing, but it doesn't make sense to me. So
Good.
Thanks.
Marlis?
Yes, well, I definitely think that it's a good idea to have one, and I'm surprised that the city of Morro Bay doesn't have one, I guess. Or maybe we do and we just don't know where to find it. I think this is a start, and I have, again, tried to rewrite. I'm not going to read this, but I will send it to you. I just changed the end to suggest to ensure a safe, clean, and healthy environment for residents. And I substituted infrastructure with the city. Morro Bay provides essential public safety and city administrative services to ensure a safe, clean, healthy environment for residents and visitors to live, work, and play. So that was but that was just sitting down and dribbling it. I'm equally concerned about the process we might use to actually get citizen input and finalize that. So I hope we do have something on our next workshop where they have an opportunity to do that.
Great, Marlis, thanks. I would envision the mission statement being kind of at the top forefront of leading all the goals below it. Yep. And so, I think all the input's great. I think we can get there with the public. I think I agree with Marlis, how we get the input and how we get to the final And I think it should be somewhat concise. I think, we don't need to have a mission statement that is 3 or 4 paragraphs long that, is trying to be all encompassing. I think we can do it in some concise manner that fits who Morro Bay is. Those are my comments. And unless there's any other comments, I think we've completed everything. And, at this point, no more comments to my left or to my right. If there's any, we're good to go, then we can adjourn our special study session for the goal setting, and we'll take a recess, and at 6 o'clock we'll come back for our city council meeting. Thank you.